So welcome to NorthLight Innovation and the You Construct side, a part of NorthLight Innovation. And one of the pieces, and if you've been here before to one of these pieces, is kind of our initial entrepreneur speaker series pitch, is that this space was built essentially to champion the idea of entrepreneurism in the North. We've been given incredible resources, incredible mentors, incredible network and services to be able to essentially help entrepreneurs get from where they are to where they want to go, or from where they think they are to having to turn around and go back and redraw where they think they want to go in their entrepreneurial venture. And this is the Rolf and Mark Hougen Entrepreneur Speaker Series. Thank you for coming out in the weather. I think it might have distracted some folks from coming, but thanks for coming out and joining us. This is, so Rolf and Mark became really interested in this event. The whole Hougen family did, but Rolf and Mark really held on to the fact that being able to expose the story of entrepreneurs and tell it publicly and talk about all of the peaks and valleys that an average trailblazer, as we call them, but visionary goes through, is a deep part of the piece that we want to celebrate, that they want to tell the story. And I said this last week, or last month, but the way we've described it to them is that there was the First Nation culture, society is incredibly entrepreneurial. And then there's the gold rush era, which was all entrepreneurial. And then Rolf and Mark kind of came over, and the Yukon tells an incredible, the Yukon is sprinkled with a lot of their stories, and now our successes in part can be related to their vision. And then there's Air North and Air Yukon Brewing, and Lou and Mel from Lumel Studios. You are all here because you know this story in some capacity, or you've seen the bright blue and yellow in some capacity. And you're not alone because it's an internationally acclaimed space. Well, what attracted us to the story is so much about what you're just going to hear, the pure grit and passion that has made this a phenomenon in the Yukon, nationally and internationally. She's no idea. Grit. And oh my gosh, you're pure grit, darling. You are pure grit. The book's written about people like you. And O'Shea is so cool that because we've bumped this up from kind of just a little local entrepreneur speaker series to a step higher, I have invited O'Shea Jeffson to be the moderator and storyteller and story picker of this. So welcome. Please ask questions. At some point, we're expecting you to hijack O'Shea's job with your curiosities, but he has a whole series of questions to unravel this story. Thank you, guys.
There's already a question.
There we go. Let's give Lauren a round of applause, everyone, for putting this on. And so we will start, and I guess we'll just get a bit of background from Lou. And like Lauren said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. It's open, and a lot of your questions are probably wanting to be asked by some other people, so feel free to jump in, and we'll give it maybe 5 minutes. But I guess, Lou, so you have Lumel Studios. You blow glass. People who come in can experience blowing glass. They can make their own pieces. And I guess maybe just set the scene for us and kind of tell us the story of how Lumel Studios came to be from an idea in your mind to now a building that everyone recognizes when they drive by, and most of us have actually been and taken part in it.
Yeah, well, I think some of you know this story. So my journey started with fracture because one of our kids died from, and see, I did this the other day too. I never can say this. One of our kids died from leukemia. So when Rondi died, that's tough. That's shattering. And there are worse things that happen to families around the world. But for our family, that was horrible. So working through it, being strong. I have a couple of my kids here and one of my grandkids. My only grandchild so far. But being strong for your kids, trying to carry on a healthy relationship with your husband through all that crap that has happened because one of your kids dies. And then we were living in Calgary at the time, and it's March, and there's a Chinook, and it's so smoking hot, like a hot shop. And the kids are out in the backyard with some of their friends, and I grab a gigantic water gun, and I fill it up, and I run around the house, and I just spray them. And they start to just laugh and laugh and laugh. And I laugh. And it was the first time in over a year that I laughed without thinking that it was culturally right to laugh, that okay, I need to be normal. I have to ha ha, yeah, ha ha ha, but really not feeling it. And I just laughed. And it was shocking. So I walked into the house, and my high school boyfriend from F.H. Collins was in the house. I married him. I had 6 kids with him, but that's where I met him. And I said to him, I just laughed, and it felt really, really good. And I said, how do I keep it? And instantaneously he said, go to art school.
Why didn't he just tell you to start spraying where people were?
Because it had to be something that I think took my focus off of Rondi's death. Like, it had to be a different focus. And plus, we were living in Calgary, and he was on the C train passing Alberta College of Art and Design every single day on his way to work and his way back, and I had taken a year off. So I had 3 weeks to apply. I applied and ended up getting a first-year scholarship with my portfolio that I submitted. It was drawing and painting. That's who I was. I was a drawer and a painter. I went to draw and paint, but you had to sign up for multiple courses, and I saw you could take glass blowing, and I thought, whoa, who gets a chance to do that? And so I signed up for first-year glass blowing, and like every other glassblower at the studio, we went for different things, and we became instantaneously hooked. And so by second year, Mel and I said, oh, this gives us something really powerful to return home with. And what that power is 1,200-degree molten glass, but it's also true escapism. When you're working with hot glass, there is nothing else in your head. So as a grieving mom, that glass totally removed me away from all those emotions in my head, and I was solid for the time I was working. And so that's why it's powerful. But back to me crying, I have to blow my nose. How embarrassing. You know, in first year, ACAD, I did a sculpture in drawing class, and it was a gigantic nose, and it was a glass bubble, and I drew my reflection. I painted my reflection on the glass bubble, because as a Yukoner, so many of us have those snot bubbles coming out of our nose, and it's so uncomfortable. But imagine, like, if you had a snot bubble and I was sitting here and I could see my reflection in it, the moment would be genuinely fabulous, not uncomfortable, just wonderful. So all that because I used a Kleenex, but yeah. And so that, the snot bubble and that creation, and that's who I am too. I'm quirky, and I get ideas. And so in second year, Mel and I said, well, what if we were planning to come home to retire. I don't know if I could have retired, but we were going to come home, and we said, this gives us something fabulous. And so then a dream was born, and then my fellow classmates, they actually believed that it would happen. And like Mark moved up here 3 months before I even came home.
And Mark is one of the artists.
Yeah, and Tyson moved up here 2 days before I got home. They believed so strongly that it would happen that they were willing to just embrace the Yukon even before we had a studio.
And I guess walk us through the creation of Lumel Studios from start to finish, because that building didn't exist. You built it from the ground up. Maybe walk us through that and kind of how you stayed focused and put the time in to get that studio there.
Yeah, you didn't realize, but it's 4 years, so you're going to be here a long, long time. But,
Yeah, so I was going to take it a step back there. You said people were coming up here before you even actually had the studio open. How are they so convinced to do that because that's taken a big step to go for something that's not actually there yet.
Totally, before the studio's even there, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm a pretty excitable person. And I think that they sort of believed that when I said it was going to happen, it was going to happen. But I thought it was going to happen in a year. Well, probably about a year and a half. Because, we're a normal family. I have 6 kids, and my 2 youngest are still in university. And we had to figure out how to build that studio. And so it was, we sold our house in Calgary for 3 times what we bought it for. And then I knew that with the glass blowers that had moved up, we were going to build my home in Porter Creek on a lot beside my parents' house. And we were going to build a big home because that money that went into the home, if we used it and we built it bigger, then we could get more money out of the house, take a mortgage, and that mortgage would help to support the studio. So I knew we were going to build the house first, and so we built the house together. But then downtown Whitehorse, and it is an industrial complex. And so having to convince people that we could build that in downtown Whitehorse safely, I'm not a meetings person. And it was going to so many meetings, sitting down with the head of the fire department 3 different times to discuss how the whole dynamics of that would work. We've only called them, there's going to be so many asides, I'm sorry, but we've only called them once because we had our studio cleansed, blessed, but it's neither of that. It's just so that we are supported by First Nations and we support First Nations. But we had branches tied over our brand new doorways, and then we came up with a bright idea 2 days after we opened to take one of those branches and throw it in a glory hole, and smoke rose up and the alarms went off. And so they were called. But that's the one and only time that they've come.
So far, so good.
So yeah, that's the thing. So and then with code requirements came an escalation in costs. And so just trying to get the money together. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm old. Like, I'm a little older than like the youth in this room. And we were lucky. I cut up Mel's credit card when I married him, but then we discovered that credit cards come in handy. And so we had 3 credit cards that we totally maxed out. And then Mel was walking through the Vancouver airport, and he you know how you ignore those people, but he's walking along and he stops because it's the Alaska Airways, and they have a Visa card, and you can get it interest-free for a whole year. And so we got $20,000 more just like that, interest-free for a year. And then we had one bank in downtown. We believed in our dream so much that the crew was already working on the studio. We had all of our walls built. We had the concrete pad in place, and the bank turned us down. And we couldn't get our major financing. And I thought I was, okay, I'm going to mention old again. I thought I was old.
Wise.
Because, no, my hair was falling out. And I thought, I must be getting old. My hair is falling out. No, it was total stress. Because here I had the glass artist believing so strongly in me. And we had the platform and we had the walls. But we didn't have $700,000 is what we needed to finish off that end of the project. Whoa! Business Development Bank came to the rescue, and in 3 weeks, we had our $700,000 to finish. But then we had glass blowing equipment that I got from an old glassy who retired and became a farmer. We had it sitting in place, and the safety officials came in and they said, So we had to come up with $200,000 more. That was in February, and we opened That was start of February, and we ended up opening in May. And I don't know, like I didn't prostitute myself out or anything like that. I don't know how we got that $200,000, but we managed to claw every single penny without bankrupting our children.
It's interesting though, because a lot of people who are on their entrepreneurship journey,
Yeah, sorry.
no, but they do have to access money, right? Like they need to pay for that stuff. It's not free, and it's interesting that your approach was, I would probably describe as more unique than the typical entrepreneurship journey, but just staying focused and finding the money wherever you could, and just keeping going no matter what.
Yeah, yeah. We were lucky. We had some resources. We have a few brains, and since we had so many kids, we had bought a university house, and so then we managed to second mortgage that house, and so that helped bring more money in. Like this was, you know, we could have totally lost everything, but who cares? Our kids supported us, and who cares? And even if we would have built the studio, and what if people hadn't responded the way they've responded? 6 months, it would have been an absolute failure, but then we would have had this massive failure party. Like, and just totally celebrated and said, this is gonna be a restaurant, or who knows what this is gonna be, you know? Who cares? And Mel and I, the only thing that we kept, we have a cabin at Little Fox Lake that we've always called home, because we're wanderers. So that was always sort of a base for our family. So we had that, and we knew that Mel and I could grow old and have all of our grandkids and our kids visiting our cabin at Little Fox Lake. So we did have a fallback. And sometimes I think, boy, would that have been wonderful. But this is pretty fabulous. So.
And even that mindset, and it was one thing that when we had spoke a couple weeks ago, you said, even if we fail, it doesn't make a difference.
It makes no difference.
Big, right? I guess,
Yeah.
Maybe just speak to that mindset and,
Well,
you know, staying focused while keeping in mind that
yeah.
it's all relative.
And I know that, yeah, and it's all relative, and I know that all of you have fractures in your life. And if you think of the very worst fracture, there's probably not much other failures in your life that can match that fracture. And I think of our daughter dying, like what? I can't build a glass blowing studio and run a glass blowing studio? Okay, oh well, that's too bad. You know, what's that failure? And then, grab another idea and go with it. There's going to be an idea that just is glorious and doesn't fail. And it seems, I mean, this one actually isn't going to fail. This is a powerful dream, and it's running. It's just running. So.
And so if we look at that, you know, when we were in the studio the other day, a lot of people are coming in. I know that a lot of people who are down by the river come in, and you're opening yourself in the studio up to them and to everyone in the community. And you mentioned that when we were talking that people can come in and the crap that's on their mind, they can put it aside when they're working with glass. And can you maybe just speak to the experience that you want to share with people who do come into that studio?
Yeah, that first one where I'm on the computer and I say, I can do glass? Who gets a chance to do glass blowing? That's what happens every time somebody walks into our studio and understands that they can just walk over that line, no panels, and just become a glass blower. And so that's part of it, that it's that wonderment. Who gets a chance? I get a chance, and everyone can say that. And also, yeah, with our river walkers. So that's one thing I would really, really love, because we built between the liquor store and the river. And so even during the build, we got to know our river walkers as they walked by and became friends. It's a changing population, always changing, but friends with many of them. And so we coined the term river walkers just because in this room in Whitehorse, we are all river walkers. And so let's stop saying that there's street people and there's people that are healthily living in a house. Well, they actually have places to live, so we can't call them street people or river walkers. I think works really. It's solid. It's a leveling term, and so I really hope that river walkers catches on. But with our Riverwalkers program, they can come in and freely create as long as they're solid. They can be drinking. They can have alcohol on their breath because they're not solid if they haven't been drinking. So, and we've talked with the doctors about that, and that works. But also, we are a place of refuge. We had one person who came, she still had the IV in her arm, and she came directly from the hospital and sat down on our bench. And she couldn't create because actually she hadn't come directly. She had gone for a few drinks first. And then she had came to our place because she just wanted to come somewhere that was good and that was wonderful. And as she's sitting there and we're talking, and then Mark made a rose for her because she couldn't create the rose because she was a little high. And I thought, oh, should I phone the hospital? Oh, and then I thought, no. She's an adult. She's a grown up just like me, and she has every right to walk out of the hospital if she just needs to breathe and feel comfortable again. And so our place has become a refuge in storms, real storms, and a place just to sit. So the times you see the ambulance outside our studio, it's usually not us, it's usually because a river walker has called the ambulance for a friend. So that's the only drawback, is sometimes we have ambulances outside our studio, but that's fine.
As far as people who are, want to be entrepreneurs or starting that journey, a lot of us will think, typical kind of a tech mogul or someone developing a product, something like that. Do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Yes, yeah, most definitely. It's a brand new thing in Whitehorse. It's the studio. The way the studio works, there's no studio like this in the world, and we've got that from a glassblower out of Holland who came to talk to us about green energies in our studio. But he was asked, "So, is this typical? Are there other studios like this in the world?" And he said, "There's not a single studio like this where all abilities, all ages can create on the bench." And also another thing we do at Lumel is artists get paid a agreed wage. And so they get paid, it's just a little under, their starting wage is just a little under first-year teachers in the Yukon. Just a little. And that's absolutely unheard of. I know how hard I worked at school. I know how hard my fellow glassblowers worked, and if you've been there, we work our butts off at Lumel, and everyone deserves a agreed wage, and everyone who works with us has a living wage. So it's 22 point, what is it now, 39, but it's 22 and a half. But except I'm not delusional. Our high school students that live at home get paid minimum wage. But I will celebrate when minimum wage goes up to $15, and I'll pay them the $15. Gladly, I'll pay them the $15. I think that people need to be paid well. The people I work with, they need to be able to get married. They need to be able to have kids if they want to have kids. They need to be able to have a house. So at the very beginning, all that debt that we were weighted under, and we said, oh, yeah, and it's so important. We're going to pay everyone at the studio really, really well. Like, that's just crazy, except it works.
It's the future.
Yes, it's the future. It solidly works because everyone works their butt off at the studio, and they're happy. And it's a job, but it becomes where we're all working together, and so it is a happy, happy place.
And so, obviously, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
A couple quick questions. Are you a private company?
Yes,
Are you sole proprietor or incorporated?
we're incorporated
Why?
50-50 with my husband, that high school sweetheart of mine.
What brought you to be incorporated
Yeah.
rather than
we thought of being a society, actually, because we knew where our hearts was
For
based.
sure, like, I think Free the Beat Foundation and Lumel have got a lot to talk about, but I'm thinking of mirroring a private company to support Free the Beat and fund it, doing basically community outreach and entertainment, but I'm trying to figure out how to do that legally and ethically to support the non-for-profit, like giving 50% of profits, 49% of shares.
Yeah.
But along those ideas, I'd definitely like to talk to you after this, so that I don't.
Yeah, because that is a tightrope that has gotten people in trouble in the Yukon. And also, we at first were a dual. We had, I even forget our acronym. It was so long for our social side. And then we had Lumel Studios. But in the end, somebody, when we were talking to them, said the only trouble with a social entity is that some of your vision, maybe not in the near future, but maybe in 10 years from now, some of your vision might be pulled out because the board has another agenda. And I knew what my vision was for Lumel, and I wanted it a concrete vision of social support, and most people would say that is not healthy for a business, and a board would have taken it away from me probably within the first year, like it to a point. So, yeah.
We got to
Talk more, yeah.
I I just kind of wanted to introduce that idea and see what you had to say about it, because like literally signing the paperwork tomorrow, so like wanting to get a solid grasp.
Well, who else can address that in the room to a much better, right there?
Governance Week, I am. There are models operating right now in Whitehorse where people have a private sector vision. They are incorporated as a not-for-profit, and they hire themselves as the executive director.
Okay.
And then
Well,
so on
see,
and so
like
on.
this is what I'm trying to swing here, is that I'm on the board, president of Free the Beat Foundation, which I'd like to run as a not-for-profit business, as a self-sufficient entity. But on top of that, to fund further, I want to create a mere private company that will give 50%, like written into its constitution, bylaws, whatever, 50% of our profits to Free the Beat to fund it by picking up, like doing all the private functions where Free the Beat can focus on the community outreach.
So you
that we
can do all of
fund
that?
it like that, and then I can just walk out of the room and let the board deal with it, because I'm going to be CEO and president. So I have to figure out a way to show my commitment to the ethics of the situation, but still make it happen in some way. So it's like I've been self-educating on corporate affairs and stuff like that, so I'm trying to get there. But this is like a bigger step that somebody who's been there and done that would be awesome to learn from at this point.
Yeah, and maybe just building on that, obviously Lumel has a vision, and you mentioned what's in your heart. And how do you balance growing the business and keeping it successful with providing a lot of the services and benefits to the community that you do, right? Being able to pay these higher wages.
Because like our Free the Beat Foundation employees, what I'm trying to set up here is like living wages, where it's $20 to $30 an hour if you're going to school, and we supplement your education, and then $30 to $40 an hour where you eat, sleep, and breathe Free the Beat, and you make it happen. And we won't have very many. I'd rather have 2 employees getting paid $30 an hour than 15 getting minimum wage, because those 2 will be able to support themselves and their homes and their families and make big ripples in the community of positivity, as opposed to just
I know Patty is somebody to talk to later,
And
and I'll talk too after.
yeah, and I guess just so how do you kind of keep
Yeah.
that vision and balance the business needs with providing benefits to the community without keeping the doors open, right?
Yeah, you work very, very hard. And also, we have a product that people love. It's so interesting because I love the process, and that's why we are a teaching studio. But people also just love the product to death. And so we have created Northern glass. And our glass, if you walk, I was south, I was in Louisiana, and we walked into a number of shops, and I'm looking at the glass and I think, this all has the same voice as everything else in Seattle. Like, it's beautiful, but it looks all the same. And then you come into Lumel Studios, and it's part of the happiness, and it's part of the free expression, and it's living here. And so you put that all together, and we've created, our pieces are actually the lowest prices in the world, probably. Yukoners don't really know that, but they are pieces that do sell south. We just have it in a gallery. That gallery opened 4 days ago, and the owner of the gallery typed me a note. I saw it this morning, and she said, well, you probably knew this, but all your pieces have sold already. We need to talk about getting more. And that's our Northern Lights. And yeah, they're dark in there, but they're wondrous because they're Northern Lights. Yeah. And so you're not selling a piece of glass, you're selling that connect that all Canadians have. And even if you live south and you see a glimmer in the sky, you just feel so good. Or you hear that there's Northern Lights in the Yukon and you're gonna go there someday. And so you buy this glass and you drink wine out of it and you dream about the day that you're gonna fly to the Yukon and see those Northern Lights. And so that's, yeah, so my goal now, 2.5 years and we are healthy. We were healthy 3 months after we opened. We made our first $300 3 months after we opened above our debts. But that money, so then anything we made went into buying bulk glass last year so that we can support ourselves better. And now I applied for Yukon College Innovation, and I did not get the mobile studio money so that we could go to every community in the Yukon. But now we have a little pocket of cash, and Christmas is coming, so we're going to have more. So it's taking chances, but within that, I know my business so well, our business so well, because I say our because it's all of us working. So I'm taking that money, and 2 days ago, I ordered the mobile glass equipment. What I didn't get is the gigantic trailer. That's the biggest cost, because we need glass artists to be able to travel, to stay 3 weeks, to stay a month, to go to Pelly. I mean, wouldn't it be incredible? I know that White River is an interesting community. What if we spent 2 months in White River just working with the young people, just working with the 5-year-old kids, the 7-year-old kids, just having a lot of fun. And then, but working with the elders and working with the parents and just enjoying ourselves in White River for 2 months. Yeah. You know, just saying, no, this is where we are right now. Yeah. And then what product do we create, the 2 artists that are there, and maybe more artists come in? Or maybe we call an international artist to come to White River and to create within that space there, you know, and make it this wonderful, incredible space in the Yukon. So dreams like that, but all, really thinking, because I have said I will never lay off a Lumel employee. So I know that I must plan wisely, and I am planning to grow because we need more glass blowers. But we have our first Yukon glass blower heading south who has applied to Alberta College of Art and Design. He's going to graduate with a degree, though, because it's turning into a university. So we have a glass blower that I need to develop work for so that he has a full-time job when he returns after 4 years and a job every summer. We get 2 university students from ACAD that come up every summer for an adventure. The studio needs to be working for them, so we need to grow. One way to grow is a mobile studio. And then what happens if Old Crow loves a mobile studio so much that it decides that they need a permanent studio, small studio but permanent? Then it would be great to have a glass artist there. And so then that's more work. Yeah. And there is no industry in Canada. There is no glass industry in Canada there are small little shops. The Mecca is Seattle, New York, glass meccas. Well, Yukon can be a rising glass industry. Yeah.
I mean, for yourself, looking at your entrepreneurship journey again, a lot of people, we're hearing are learning, essentially learning on the job, right? Kind of going through the motions themselves. And what are some of the things that you would maybe do differently starting up Lumel?
Yeah, that's a hard one. Because, even with my hair falling out, I wouldn't have not built those walls and put in that concrete pad because it forced us to keep building. And the belief that my fellow artists had in us, because all of a sudden it was, they believed in it before, but then it was so tangible, like it couldn't stop. And so we were forced to go on. What would I do? What would I do differently? Well, I know what I plan to do differently.
Okay.
I work incredibly long days. I'm usually at the studio at 4 or 5 in the morning. I used to work till 9 at night or 9:30 at night, sometimes 10. But I've stopped that. I quit now at the studio around 6 o'clock. And so, but I think that is necessary. But then I think you need to develop a plan where you lasso yourself and you rein yourself in and you say enough, because everyone else at the studio works 40 hours a week, because I value that we need time to enjoy this incredible land. So they only work 40 hours a week. So what am I doing with myself? But I don't think until this point that I could have done that differently, because it was growing so fast. But now is the time that I've been starting to take Sundays off. Yes! Woohoo! And then Mondays, that's when we're closed right now. I need to be taking Mondays off. And then I need to spend less time, except I'm a morning person, so I love that. But when it's joyous work too, but it's still too much work. So that is one thing that must change, is the hours I put in.
Yeah. The Yukon Built guys were here last month, and one of the questions that was asked of them is at what point do you think you'll be in a position to retire or to step back, or is that even on the schedule? Is that part of the plan?
Yeah, I think that, because I think about this, what if I died in a car accident tomorrow? It can happen. Would the studio still continue as it is? And you know what? It would. I think that the dream has been just totally, everyone sings every day at Lumel. The dream has been embraced by everyone who works there. And it would change slightly, but it would be a studio for centuries if it wanted to be. So I could step back now, but I'm loving what I'm doing, and I'm loving the potential of growth for the studio and what can happen in the Yukon. And when I talk about glass blowing studios in Old Crow or in Pali, that's not something that will happen overnight. That's struggle, and that's work, and that's relationships. So that's, and I'm a people person, so I can't wait for those relationships, but that's going to take time, and I would love to be a part of that. So eventually, maybe in my 80s, Mel and I will go off and travel the world. That's what we thought we were going to do before our daughter died. That's what we thought our retirement would be, just going and living in a place and acting like a local for 6 months of the year, like in the middle of winter somewhere or in a hot spot. So maybe when we're really, really old, we'll do that.
Nothing but time.
Yeah, but before that, no, there's some really sweet dreams to keep on going with. So I can step back, certainly.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to.
So I have a question for you. As a shareholder, as your husband, and while he's been massively involved in your business, he's been working from afar.
Yeah.
And he's coming home soon.
Yeah.
So what's his expectation on his role in your space, and how will that change your workday?
You know that beautiful deck in Lumel Studios? That deck was built for Mel. Mel played the saxophone at F.H. Collins, but we always thought we'd have 4 kids. Good thing, then we had 6 kids. He thought, well, I can't be a musician because we have to feed our kids. He wants to come back and busk on that deck. He wants to be involved in the music community. And he actually went down with the Foothills Pipeline years and years and years ago as a technician. And one thing I am really tired of doing is at 4:30 in the morning fixing the annealers, like all the equipment at the studio. And so Mel will come into the studio to be a technician, but the studio is very, very much my studio.
Domain,
Yeah, and yes, we own it half and half, but he's not going to be a part of the business. He's going to support the business in wonderful ways. But Mel is a very kind, and he's a mediator, and so he's going to come into the Yukon, and I can't wait to see what he does out there with his life as a Yukoner. So Mel, 6 years ago, Mel came out of retirement and went back to work 2 hours later, because we had this dream and we had to figure out, we wanted to be able to pay off some of our debts ourselves. So we do have money that that our shareholders loan to Lumel Studios. So over the years we've managed to claw back, and that's how we paid off all those Visa cards. But then as soon as 3 months after we opened, we made our first $300, that was the moment that Mel could come home. But then he was trapped in his job, and he's coming home in January, and I get to live with my high school boyfriend again. And that's going to be just amazing. So that will be really good. Yeah.
Yeah, any other questions?
One thing I'd like to change, I was thinking about it I went to the Opportunities North conference, and the speaker, the main speaker, what he talked about was exactly what happens in the computer rooms here. Like, I don't even know what happens in the computer rooms here, but I know that's what he was talking about, that's the future, that's the new world. So much of that is. But I believe our hands-on still works, because we still need that as humans. But what we have to do as individuals is we have to get investors and banks believing in investing in just an idea that is out in space. At least Mel and I built the house, mortgaged the house, had the university house, double mortgaged that house. Like, at least we had, we're so lucky that we ended up with 4 Visa cards, right? But I'll get back to this, but just on the side, it is one of those irritating things as a woman. I got a phone call. Hello, ma'am. Do you realize you've maxed out your Visa card? Mel didn't get a phone call. I did. And I said, I know. Actually, we have 4 Visa cards altogether, and all of them are maxed out. But you just wait and see. Have you ever been to the Yukon? Because we're building something in the Yukon. And if you haven't been here, you better come here, because the Yukon's great, and our money's going into something really, really good. Don't apologize for a dream that you have to make sacrifices for. And if it failed and we would have had to pay off those cars, Mel and I would have both worked at a gas station pumping. I worked the Chilkoot Inn. I was a chambermaid at the Chilkoot Inn when I was in grade 12. I can be a chambermaid again. We would have paid off every bit of that money over time. We would have done it. So take the risk. But at least we were old, so we had Visa cards, we had land. So the banks turned us down, but then one high-risk bank believed in us. But here, how do you change those institutions with money to realize that there is absolute power in the room behind us? And the world, they don't change as fast as we change. So that's something that I think we need to talk about so much more, because if we talk about it more, they will eventually catch up. Yeah.
You had a question?
What are you up to after this?
Going out to supper with my kids. But we can make
Yeah.
yeah.
Are you at the shop tomorrow?
Oh yeah. Yeah, you just come
Well,
walking
I'll
in.
stop by. Definitely.
Yeah.
It's what Free the Beat Foundation's trying to do is switch roles from just entertainment and fundraising to community outreach and entertainment and fundraising. And I feel like that bus has a hitch, and it can haul a really heavy trailer. So that's a really interesting idea if you can get mobile equipment because we want to do workshops.
But just because I might look like a guru, but I'm actually not. And then there's so many things that I don't know. But I can certainly help with my experiences. Yeah.
And taking that experience, if there was another entrepreneur that came to you and said, I'd like some advice, what are some questions that you would ask them to see if they're ready to make the plunge and maybe leave their full-time job or take the risk and just jump in?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would just say, do you really, really believe that this is possible and that it will make a difference? And maybe that difference is in your life. Maybe it's not in community. But I would really say don't go for the riches, go for the broader wealth. So I would say that. What are you going for? Are you going for riches or are you going for a broader wealth? My advice would be go for broader wealth because this generation wants broader wealth. What, riches? What is that given this world? No. So I would say, I'd ask if you're going for broader wealth. And then I would say, come up with a backup plan. But a backup plan, in Canada, we're so lucky because we can, if we have absolutely nothing, we can still eat. So realize that you can dip deep down and take, because debt is relative. That costs a few $1 million, and how a normal couple with 2 kids still in university and having spent all the money on the 6 kids could afford all of that. So relatively speaking, we plunged in so far over our heads, it was ridiculous. So I would also say, are you willing to plunge in so far over your head because you believe so strongly in this dream? And then if you fail, are you willing to just celebrate like crazy and get over it? And then get on to another dream, or maybe twist that dream. Oh no, I'm not a guru. I'm just enthusiastic.
So far, so you're doing something right for sure. Maybe any other questions?
Lou, when you first started to say about when you first went to art school to today, what was that? 5 years, 15 years?
I graduated in 2012 with my degree in glass. And then I moved up right after that. And then it was the struggle. And then in 2016, we were open. And I call it the struggle, and it was, like my hair was falling out so badly, I thought I was going to go bald, and I thought, oh well. I don't know. My high school sweetheart would still love me.
And you had a question as well?
Yeah, I was just wondering, which one's that high-risk bank that put their faith in you?
Oh, the Development Bank of Canada. Yeah. High interest, and be ready to pay. High interest, but they supported us when no one else believed in us. So.
Why turn it into a business instead of just being an artist and doing it on your own time and sharing it with friends instead of with communities and stuff like that?
Oh, because, the stories that happen. And I knew that there'd be stories, but the stories that happened at the studio are just unbelievable. And so it needed it to be a place where many people could walk into. Jen is part of our Elder Active program. We've had over 140 Elder Actives that are growing in skill. They're becoming glass blowers. And so we had a gigantic party for them last spring because, boy, they rock at the studio. And then there's couples that walk in who have just lost a young child, and that heartbreak and that shattering and knowing that it happened a week ago and that they're protected by their body's resources to keep them solid during that time, but I know that in a year and in 3 years they're just going to be so fractured. But they walk into our studio and they say, my daughter died, we're going to have her ashes, what can we do? What can we do with her ashes? Well, you can't take away the hurt and you can't take away the pain, but somehow their daughter rises like a small little phoenix in the glass piece. Anytime, like Bruce was sleeping in the bushes and there was a hailstorm and he came into the studio because he thought it was the end of the world, and we had sourdough rendezvous happening that night. It was a fundraiser for them and the girls were dancing and he sat there. And at the end of the evening, he went up to the MC and gave her a hug, and he went up to the Queen, and he shook the Queen's hand, and he came over to me, and he said, I thought it was the end of the world, and this is one of the best nights in my life. And you know what, I'm sure, hopefully for him, there's going to be better nights, but it was still so sweet. And so also I knew that we wanted it to be a studio where fractured people can easily walk into. Another plan was to build our studio out at Little Fox Lake. That cabin that I said would be our fallback plan. But who would have walked by? It would have been people with money, cars. So that wouldn't have worked right whatsoever. We needed a place where people could walk by, and that's why we have open doors. That's why we have the big garage doors, so they can be open, so anyone can walk into our studio. And so I think I knew some of those stories would happen because that was the dream. Yeah. But those, there's so many of them. Those stories are more powerful than anything I ever dreamt would be happening in our studio.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when Lou talks about open doors, when she talks about river people coming into her studio, I mean, I think that always also talks to her sense of energy, and more importantly, besides her perception on community and her family. And I think a big part of why she's so successful is because when you go through the doors, no matter who you are, her arms are open. You know, if you need anything, Lou's always the first one to help or to talk to people. And I think that speaks to a lot of her success. I will mention something else is that my daughter works at the museum, and I'm not sure if anyone's been there, but there is about 190 now icicles.
No, 240 some now. I just brought more.
Okay, she was waiting for that. So anytime visitors come into the museum, the display is at the front door and it kind of winds across the ceiling. The first thing people always ask is they want to know about those icicles, and they want to know who made them. They certainly don't think that people made them. They think that they were ordered from some, other center. I'm well aware that this was a huge fundraiser for the museum, but I have to tell you, I'm not sure Lou is actually covering her costs. So things like that do make a huge difference. Lou's always been very supportive of McBride, and I just really wanted to thank you and thank you for all the work you've done and how you really do embrace the community. As a community member, that means a whole lot to me.
Yeah, Yukoners made those icicles, and it's incredible. As a young possible entrepreneur that I'm giving advice to,
Yeah.
so there's another piece of advice, and that is you better watch your ego. Because we do good things at the studio, and I tell lovely stories, but I almost feel like I should swear, but I won't. I don't swear often, but sometimes swearing really has meaning. So I'm gonna, emphasis.
We can bleep it out, I'm sure.
Yeah, like holy shit, don't put yourself up on a pedestal because you are gonna be knocked over. And you will deserve to be knocked over. And possibly you don't know you're deserving of being knocked over and you're thinking you're being knowable, but you deserve to be knocked over, so you can pick yourself up, brush yourself off and say, oh, what an idiot. Of course. So within any dream, you have to be so careful that you don't think that you're the bee's knees. Because you really aren't. It's the people you surround yourself with. Yeah. It's the community. It's all those people that walked in and made those icicles. That's who ends up making you and your dream. It's the people that support it. And so no pedestals.
Yeah, shoot.
So you said that you were hoping, like when you were going to start this business, you were hoping to make it out to the communities as well, and be more portable that way. What about setting up a program which Free the Beat could actually help with, is to bring people in from the communities to come here as a program?
Yeah, they already, like a lot of the schools come in, like they bus their kids in, and CarMax has come in numerous times. They've brought their youth center in. But there's nothing like going and staying in a community and having hot glass just there. And then maybe them saying, well, how much was this? Well, it's 27,000 American dollars to get what we are going to be getting that can fit onto the back of a trailer and can get there. And then we're going to spend $10,000 on a 20 by 20 foot circus tent. So $37,000 gets you a summer where you don't have to worry about the gigantic system that we have at our studio, because there's air, and so a community can afford that.
Yeah.
And so let's see where that goes, where it grows.
And then maybe just the last question for you.
It's not a question, it's just saying that when we've gone through Elder Active to Lumel Studios to make things, there are people that are in there already making things, like people that have come in, visitors from out of the territory and that. And we automatically are just in the PR thing right now. You should see all this stuff, and we're building it up because that's what we get from going there. And I've made, 25 or 30 items over the last...
Glass blower?
Yeah. Wow. But it's just the fact that you always feel like you're an artist when you walk out the door, and you come back the next day and you get what item you've made. It's all done up in a nice bag. You take it out and go, wow. Or, geez, I did that.
Yeah.
But it just makes you proud, and it's what you get from the other workers that are there, Lou's wonderful staff, and herself, and they just sort of let this out, like they envelop you with their talents and everything. It's just amazing.
So I think that's community. That's community, and then there's the broader community, and I think that's also what this space is here. It's community, but then, yeah, embracing that broader community. Yeah.
Any final words you'd like to say to people who might be watching or people here?
No, I talk too much. You probably noticed that. So.
Thank you for coming. I think it was great to have you. It was very insightful. And then there will be another speaker series coming up. We'll get you more details on that as well. But I just want to thank you again, Lou. It's an amazing story and amazing facility, and looking forward to going there some more.